It's Don here from the board. Thanks for coming along and checking out this video. So in this video, we're going to be checking out the second keyboard that's been sent to me by iQUNIX as part of their iQUNIX X Le Petit Prince collaboration. Now, if you haven't seen the previous video, the previous keyboard, hopefully there'll be a link over there in the other corner. But basically what happened was that iQUNIX reached out to me and said, would I be interested in actually checking out their latest collaboration keyboard? And I said, yes, please. And it's themed around Le Petit Prince. It's a book that was written a while ago, and it's actually one of my wife's favorite books. I didn't even know about it until I was dating her, and she said that, have I read it? And no, so I read her copy of it, and I quite enjoyed it. They have actually done a movie which is based on it. It's an adaptation of, I suppose, parts of the story, not exactly replicating the book. Anyway, I digress. So they reached out to me and they have a 75% keyboard, which is the one that I have reviewed in a separate video. And in this video, we're going to be looking at the 97, the F97 version of it instead, which is essentially, it's a 96 key keyboard from what I can tell. But before we get on to that, let's have a look at their product page and see what that's about, just in case if you haven't seen the other videos. So that's the collaboration there, and there's the actual 97 series. I believe it comes in a couple of different themes. So that's the floral date version, and I think there's also potentially the sunset ponder and a sky encounter version maybe. I'm not 100% sure exactly what they sent me before checking the box. Starry Tryst, there you go, that's the other edition of that as well. So the specs there, you can see 96% with 100 keys. It's PBT with an aluminium case. Now that's very different because the other one was a polycarb, a plastic case. They both have wireless. Interestingly, this actually has a lower capacity battery on the 96 compared to the 75. So both of them do show that there should be a novelty keycap with it, some other keycaps, puller, dust cover, and of course the receiver. Now I actually don't know if this is even an available keyboard from their range, because I think right now it is still not even officially listed. So I feel very lucky that I have had the opportunity to actually check this out. So very keen to open this up indeed. Now, of course, everything and anything that I say here is 100% my opinion. If I like it, then it means I honestly like it. They haven't provided me with any scripts or whatnot. So the other one we've looked at in the other video, and that's this one here. That is the 75% version of it. Quick look inside there. So do check out that other video. But one thing that I want to mention before we get into this one is I'm not going to take any of the stabilized keycaps off. And the reason for that is when we had a look at the other one, I discovered there were costar stabilizers. And I hate having to deal with costar stabilizers. And I actually struggled to get them back in because they are actually a really tight fit in the keycap. So when we get into that, we're not going to be taking any of the stabilized keys off if they haven't already naturally popped off by themselves. Okay, so I've got my little knife here, and we're going to try and be very gentle to get through this plastic without damaging the box. There we go. So when they sent this to me, the actual outer box for the two boxes they sent me was damaged. It had been, one side of it, actually the corner had been completely crushed in. So I was kind of concerned that these might have suffered some damage. The boxes themselves don't really have much damage, more than any usual things being sent from overseas to Australia. But one thing that I did notice when I looked at the 75% is that the internal contents did get a bit of a shake around. There was damage to the foam insert, which obviously it's doing its job. But the keyboard and the metal keycap, the Artisan, did actually bounce around, and you can tell because it left all these indents on the actual inside of the lid. Okay, so that's just something to be aware of depending on shipping and where you are, that you may expect the contents to have been shook around some. Now I didn't check out all of the box, my bad. So trying to get the focus going, there we go. The glare from the light is making it challenging, but that's pretty straightforward. There's no real art on the back of this one compared to the 75, which did have art. Now on the side sticker, it says there's a green. So I think that's probably the floral date version maybe, even though it's actually got the starry fate one on there. And we're using the yellow switch. I keep getting tongue-tied on this, but it's the Petit Prince switch. So yeah, I don't know what that means, but you can note that they haven't actually marked if it's RGB, LED, or wired and wireless, unless they indicate that it's actually both. Now that one was a magnet flip, so yep, so is this one. There we go. Okay, so it has suffered very similarly in that this foam has completely broken off, and you can see there's a bit of shock and crush damage from shipping. So shipping was 100% not gentle to the process. There's a bit more damage there, and that is meant to actually sit in like that, and it's stuck down, but the shipping was so violent that it's actually managed to rip it off the foam, which is a little bit sad. It's not really it's not their fault that the shipping was violent. I suppose it's not iQUNIX's fault, but what it does say though is they probably need to reconsider their packaging design, because it's really heartbreaking to open something like this and you might see the presentation of it on the product page or Instagram or wherever else, and then you end up with this. I'm not too bothered by it, because obviously, you know, this is a review piece that's being sent to me, but if I had paid for this and it came with this amount of damage, the beauty of it is unfortunately marred, right? So that's just something to be aware of, I guess, for you iQUNIX, that you might want to consider changing how this is done and packaging it in a way that would actually survive international shipping a little bit better. I mean, the presentation is beautiful, but it's not as great as if it didn't have this level of damage. Now, what's really positive, I guess, is that the artisans actually stayed in the insert right now, because on the 75% it was loose, and you can see that on this one as well, what I'm talking about with the indentations. So there's these marks here, if the focus will work. There we go. So there's these marks, these indents here. They are actually from the artisan keycap and the keyboard bouncing up and down against this and bashing against it, leaving that indent. It is exactly the same keycap as the one on the 75, so you won't have any differences between them, but it's a very simple line art version of the Prince, his head, his face, and it's just a standard cross, the MX stem type of artisan. It's aluminium, it's nicely made, so kudos to that. Okay, let's pop that out. So on the 75, their one actually runs this way, whereas this 97, 96 key version 97, the F97 is running this way. So let's just put that over here temporarily. All right, so we have a packet. So there's more damage on the packaging there. You can see those strike marks, and that's actually the back of the artisan leaving those dents, which is a bit unfortunate. And so these ones got it too. They're different. They're different. Wow, that's actually really cool. Okay, so what I'm talking about is these little postcards that are in this sleeve. They're kind of like collector's items, because they're prints of artwork from the actual book in color. Because in the actual book, they're just black and white, at least in the print version that we've got. So that's actually really lovely. And as I said, for the 75, you know, you could frame these, you could stick them up on the wall or however you like, but these are different, because the ones for the 75 are actually in portrait mode, whereas these are in landscape mode, and they're slightly different in terms of the pictures. Some of them are repeated, but that's actually really nice. Now, what does that mean? If you're a collector and you really love, you know, the Petit Prince, or Le Petit Prince, I think that actually just means the little prince, then it means you might have to shell out for both if you want the cards. Otherwise, if you can convince a friend who just wants the keyboard and you want the cards, maybe you can you can do a deal and do a split. Now, what's really interestingly and different about this is there's no sleeve. What I'm talking about is this one came in protective sleeve with the cover. So that's interesting. I don't know if they forget it. It's intentional. It's not a big deal for me. A lot of boards come with them. Some boards don't. All right. There's a lot of heft to that because the aluminium case. That's nice. We'll put that to the side for now. And whoa, what has happened here? What is that? That's a little rubber dent. Wow! The rubber dent, the rubber ball bit on the actual foot has come off. It has suffered so much shock from travel, it has torn the paper laminate on the foam. So incredible. And it's caused the actual foot rubber to pop off and adhere itself to the bottom of the box. So much so, with so much pressure, that it's actually stuck the adhesive to the paper, and now, like, I'm not even going to be able to stick that onto the bottom of the foot easily or cleanly. Look, as I said, you know, this is probably something that they didn't think about, because shipping, generally you would expect that there's a certain standard of handling and care. And Australia is, honestly, it is a long way. And you just don't know how well your shipping chain is going to be and how well it's going to treat your delivery and your product. So it is a little bit disappointing. Let me see if this still has any adhesive left on it. No, it's pretty much gone. I don't know if that's got any adhesiveness on it, but let's just drop that in there and hope that it stays. It might fall out. I don't know. We'll just see. Make sure it doesn't get lost, and I'll just have to glue it on later. All right, so let's keep going. It's nice that they have this. The 75 had a very similar. It had two packages. One had all the bits and pieces, and the other package had the cards that are in this sleeve. So I do like that that's there, although it's interesting that they've actually put this on top as a presentation item versus underneath like they've done with the 75. So in here we should expect to see the variety of items. So there's your Mac replacement keys. Then we should have our puller. And so in here, I mean, I'll have to open these anyway, because really I should be reviewing this in isolation, since I can't guarantee that you would watch the other one. So they've given you a standard wire puller. They've given us a keycap puller, which is quite a nice one. It's got the iQUNIX hexagon shape in the actual arm punched out. And then what's really cool and what's really different compared to a lot of other keyboards that I've reviewed to date is they've given you a brush, so you can actually clean in between, which is actually really neat. It's the first keyboards that I've ever received for review that actually includes a brush. So thumbs up for that. Well thought and appreciated, of course. So I'll keep the puller out for now because I'll probably use that to pull up one of the keycaps just to check it. And then, okay, so the 75% that I checked out before was a blue one. This one is also sort of the dark blue color, but they provided a white cable for it, whereas this one is a black cable. interesting choices there. This is actually the 2.4 gigahertz receiver for wireless mode, and then they've actually given you a converter as well, a USB-A to USB-C converter if you need it. And it acts as, of course, the double to hold the receiver, which I think was actually really neat. So now I'm not going to test the wireless mode. I have absolute confidence that it will work as intended. Generally they will. Okay, interesting. So I've got an iQUNIX little bit and some stickers there. The iQUNIX will just detail some very general information about the keyboard. It is not actually a product manual, and that is what is missing. There is no keyboard guide to this. Yeah, the 75 actually had a manual. There is no manual here, so that makes it very interesting. But we will check it out anyway. All right, so let's just put that to the side. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but we will see shortly. All right, let's take the cover off as well, so we can have a look at the keyboard proper. Okay, the feet is still on it. Now, what this, I suppose, is an interesting point. Let's just have a look at the back. So we've got wide mode and wireless mode just on a little toggle switch here. Okay, the feet, they don't unscrew or come off. Yeah, they're on pretty tight. There's a bulge here. There's a bulge there. That is very unusual, and to be honest, I kind of don't hate it, but I also don't like it. I kind of get it because it makes the artwork here a feature. It sits out, and I guess that's also why the feet are permanent, because otherwise, if you had the ability to take that off, if you forget it, you would actually be scratching that or damaging that, marring that finish. I guess it also helps because it allows them to have a recess for, say, the battery if you open it up and check it out, which I'm not planning on doing for this video. But it's ugly, actually, the more I look at it. I get it, but I don't really like it. The styling, because this is just printed, actually makes it cheap. It makes it look cheap. It makes it feel cheap. What I would recommend, if they were to ever revise this, to be honest, is that they should actually make this a separate piece, even if it was hollow, but somehow manufacture it so it's a separate plate and it was actually screwed or bolted on. Because then, as a item that looks like a plaque, instead of just a protruded bump here, I feel like would actually stand out better. Like, it looks like a plaque because they've got these stars here, but honestly, it just looks odd to me. I'm very sorry to say, but I'm not a fan of that now that I've had a little bit of time to consider it. Okay, so on the back we've got the iQUNIX symbol here in some little plate. There's the actual USB-C. On the front we've got Le Petit Prince, and there is some damage there, which is from shipping, so not much we can do about that. Is that just foam and paint, or it's not a scratch, but it's discoloration from, I think, the print that's actually rubbed on it from the transit, which is a bit unfortunate. The case is interesting because it's got pocket holes. Now, if you don't know what pocket holes are, you ask a woodworker, they'll be able to tell you what a pocket hole is. But these screw holes are angled. They're angled into the 90-degree miter. So they have an angle that cuts this way. So there are actually two screws going into that, and then the back is also a very small, short pocket hole, because if you look at the fact that I'm lining up, the focus is really struggling today. too close. There we go. The screws are lined up there straight on, but the keyboard's at an angle. So it's actually joining up the monitor down here as well. So it's actually running like that, and on both sides. So it's an interesting way of doing it because they don't have screws on the top, which is nice. They don't have screws on the bottom. The screws are on the side, and it allows them to have these really thin case edges. I've never seen that before. That is actually a really interesting design. Okay, let's have a look at the keycaps. The print's really nice. The pattern's really nice. It's well thought out. It's very cohesive. Thematically speaking, it's spot on. Interestingly, compared to the 75, the caps lock art was blank. So some of the keycaps actually didn't have any of the legends for the mods on it, but they've managed to actually fit that in around with the Starry Night version of it. Now the bleed on this is very low. It's very clean and very crisp as far as the actual legends go, which is nice. And the profile it's a low sculpted profile. It's not cherry, but it's got some roundness to it. I'm not 100% sure what it is because the specs didn't detail that. Now, as I said before, they use costar stabilizers, I believe. So I'm not going to actually yank the stabilized switch out, but I'm just going to check on the side if that is the same in this one or not. Yeah, it looks like it. Maybe. Let's just take another keycap off from a different angle so we can check. That's... Yes, maybe. Oh. Or have they gone with conventional on this? No, they haven't. These are not costars. All right. Yeah, okay, so these are just straight plate mounts. These ones are straight plate mounts. Let me just check my notes on this because I did have some email communications with iQUNIX, and I think they may have actually mentioned it somewhere. Let me keep reading. Okay, so it said, you may receive costar plate mount stabilizers and polycarb plate steel plate randomly. For the final production, we will be applying polycarbonate plate and plate mount stabilizers after inventories run out. Okay, so there you go. So that explains the difference in that they should become plate mount afterwards. Cool, that's all right. I guess that means for production for the 75%, then you will actually end up with plate mount stabilizers, a bit more standard, which is good, which is good. All right, so we can see these Little Prince switches, and we'll have a look at, to show off, there's the puller, the switch puller with a little band to help get it in. They've got, short hooks, and there's that hex that I was talking about. So we can get in to these and hopefully get one out. Well, that's in really tight. That one really does not want to come out. All right, let's try a different one. I'm always wary about these because I don't want to yank them out too hard and snap anything. But it doesn't really bode well if these, there we go, okay, don't come out nicely. So I think the thickness of the puller is not fantastic in getting underneath the top lip to pop them out. So it is a linear switch. It doesn't have any silicon or dampening. It's a boxed in type. You can see sort of there's a little bit of wobble on that. It's pretty smooth, it's pretty light. I think these are actually, they feel lighter than the rose switch that was on the 75, And then underneath you can see it's a pretty standard hot swap with a RGB LED that's actually fitted on the PCB there, and there's some kind of rubber mat that is above the PCB. Maybe? Or is that the PCB directly? No, that's actually the PCB directly. Is it? I can see traces on that. Hang on, let me feel it. No, I think that's actually the PCB. So it's multi-layered then, if but I can see there's foam underneath it. Okay. Right. So this is really interesting. That RGB LED is actually mounted on the underside, I think, of the PCB. It's actually in the layer of the PCB, which is really interesting. Which is really, really interesting. Okay, so we've seen what that looks like, and the plate is that's metal. Yeah, steel plate. So the final production, they will be applying a polycarbonate plate and plate mount. So the weight of this is probably going to go down a little bit, and the stiffness is probably going to change as well, because right now it's got a little bit of flex on it, but it is very sturdy with the aluminium case and of course a steel plate. All right, let's get this back in. Snap. There's the backspace, or the star B612. We'll get the enter back in. Actually, I should check the thickness of these while I've got them out. So the other keyboard, we were able to identify that they actually had 1.75 mil thickness on the keycaps. So on these ones, we have nearly 165. Yeah, so these ones aren't as thick. It is over 1.5, I'd say. 1.3? 1.3. It's actually lining up on the 1.3 mark. So a little bit thinner than the other ones. Inconsistency in terms of production, I guess. Yeah, that's lining up to 1.3 mil. Alright, let's have a look at this other one, just to make sure, just to check how consistent we are in the thickness on these. Yeah, so these are 1.3. Interesting. Interesting. Not as thick as the other ones. So whatever factory that they're getting these done in is not as consistent, I suppose. But that's okay. They're still over a mil, so they're not super duper absolutely thin keycaps. Alright, now let's just put this away, because we're not going to be pulling up another keycap. And let's get the braided cable out. So it's just a plain black braided cable, nothing wrong with that. Standard ends, not gold plated or anything super fancy. It's an interesting choice that the cable is all the way on that side. On the 75%, it is actually in the middle. So that's a far stretch, at least for my current setup. But obviously, you know, you can do things as you require. All right. Okay, so I've got a light flashing there in the middle, which means it might be potentially charging or doing something else. I'm not 100% sure. Let me find my mouse cursor and see if it will work. Yeah, okay, it's working, and you can see there is a lighting mode on this. Now I don't have a manual, so I actually don't know how to change the lighting modes on this. So I can't really show you how bright it is, except I'm just changing my light modes on this. Turn that off. Turn off the room light. Okay, so it's yeah, it's obviously not focusing very well because it's trying to compensate in the dark like mad, but it does definitely have RGB on it. Just a default factory mode or whatever it is, like, I don't know. It was function Z to turn it off, and that obviously didn't work because it's still going. All right, well, we'll just leave it running because it doesn't really matter. So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch over to this microphone, which is my calibration microphone, my measurement microphone, which will give me a better idea of the sound, will give you a better idea because it's going to be a complete flat profile rather than the ribbon microphone that we're talking in right now. And we'll do 1 or 2 30-second monkey types, and then you'll be able to check out what that sounds like. So let's switch microphones now. All right, so that should be an okay volume, maybe too loud. All right, how's that? Yep, that looks okay. So let's do a 30-second monkey type. I'm a little bit lost for words because it's actually a little bit disappointing. I actually wanted to like this board more because I'm a fan of 96% layouts, but the combination of these switches, the feel, and the sound, I don't like as much as the 75%. They're very light switches by comparison to the Rose switches, so they feel harder for me to type on. I don't get that sound, that bounce, that feel that I'm after in terms of my typing. And because I bottom out considerably, and having the steel plate and the rigidness of this aluminium board, it is a harsher endpoint. It does actually hit harder. And it is actually a sharper noise. Now this is really weird because I use clicky boards. Like my daily driver at home here, this one, my Philco, is an MX Blue. And my work, the laptop keyboard that I use for work is Box Navies, and I use Box Pinks in the office. So you would think that noisy and clicky is fine, but these are not clicky, they are sharp, bottom out sounds. And right now I don't like it. I'm not a fan, which is really, really odd. Now I did 2 lots with the 75, so I'm going to just be fair and let's do a second lot of 30 seconds as well on this one. Okay, here we go. I'm going to say that my opinion hasn't changed significantly with that second lot of typing. So the first one that I did, I was typing at about 89 words per minute. And so you can see I'm doing a little bit faster now that I've got a second adjustment to it at 109, 96% accuracy. That's about right for me. 90 to 95 is pretty normal. But once again, the feeling is different. It is definitely a harder feel. If you bottom out a bit hard and you type with that all the way down and through like I do, and you don't like the stiffness of something that's really firm, then this combination is probably not necessarily going to suit you very well. The fact that they're going to change it to a polycarbonate plate into the future may change that, but I can't talk about that right now because that's not what I have in front of me. So the sound, it's okay, it's tolerable, but it's not as pleasant because it is higher pitched, which is different to clicky switches and click bar switches that I have, because they don't have a high pitch to them and they have a very different tactile sensation around them and the response from typing on them. I won't say it's bad. If you like that kind of sound and response and feel, then this keyboard may be fantastic for you. On the positive side, there's no pinging, there's no crunching, there's no spring sounds, there's no excess vibrations that would make you potentially hate this. The switches are smooth, they're really smooth, there's no grittiness to them, and there's no wobble that I'm feeling from typing on these. So those points are really great, but for personal preference, this is a stiff responding board. Okay, I don't know what it sounds like through the microphone to you compared to my ears, but hopefully you can hear and understand what I'm talking about. So let's switch microphones again and wrap up on this. Okay, where do I go from this in terms of just a summary? Oh, that's really stiff. Okay. The board design is quite interesting. The really thin case, because they've gone with these pocket screw arrangement, is really neat. It's got a good amount of heft to it. It doesn't slide around or anything like that. So if you like heavy, weighty boards, then this could definitely be there. Thematically speaking, the keycap set is really lovely. They are crisp prints. It's very cohesive. The keycap profile is actually really nice. The thickness is quite decent. The understyle, not a big fan, but if you don't mind and you never look at the bottom of your keyboard, who cares? The feet angle, perfectly fine. The stiffness on this, the flex, it's an aluminium board. While it's thin, like, you don't notice it at all. The typing sound, the switches, they're smooth, right? They're smooth, they're light, they're linears. Generally not my personal preference, but I can type with this. I could type with this without really any issue. It's just if I was going to do extensive amount of typing on it, it wouldn't be as nice compared to other options. If you like that firmer bottom out, then this one might be for you. It is good that this one has the standard sort of plate mount stabilizers, although I'm a bit more of a fan of PCB mount stabilizers, but it's not the costars, so that's always a plus. And of course, you know, as far as it goes from a theme, if you really like Le Petit Prince, then this would be right up your alley. Now, for completeness, we really should also swap out that Escape and replace it with the Artisan. So they've gone for a really tight fit on this, but it actually makes it harder to get your puller in, to get your keycap out. So that's just something to be aware of. You probably want to give maybe even just a 0.5 mil more tolerance there. And there you go. That's what it looks like with the Prince's face on it. It actually honestly is really cute to have the Prince on that Artisan. There we go. There we go. The glare is making the camera struggle for sure. Okay. I gave the other board a 9 out of 10 because it had bolts on the front that just looked weird and didn't fit. Oh, look, it's flashing at me for some reason. Oh, it's because I bumped it to wireless mode. Okay, there we go. Would I give this board a 9 out of 10? I have to put personal preferences aside because that's personal preferences around the feel and the sound, okay? In terms of the style, in terms of the product, if I ignore the damage to the packaging from shipping, I would actually probably rate this also around that 8 mark or potentially 9 mark. The lost point really is going to be because of this. This oddity here, not a huge fan around that. And then of course the fixed feet is another reason. So, you know, that's, I'd say probably an 8 on this, because I think the thought behind this was not as cohesive by comparison to the 75. So an 8 out of 10 for this particular board. Still a great board. It looks really nice. It's well presented, well made, feels solid, and you know, if you're into that kind of feel for the typing, then it should perform really great for you. So there you have it. There is the two, just bumped that. There are the two Le Petit Prince themed boards from iQUNIX. If you're into that, Le Petit Prince, man, I'm going to keep tripping over that forever and a day. And you're also after potentially some really nice collectibles. That's just something to think about, something to keep in mind. I want to say thank you very much to iQUNIX for sending me these. Really enjoyed being able to check them out as pre-production units, I guess, is the best way of describing that. And I hope that you enjoyed this review. If you haven't seen the other one, please do check it out in the link that would have been at the start of this video, so you can have an idea around what I was talking about with the 75%. If you like this kind of stuff, if you like this video, please of course hit that like button, that subscribe button, that bell notification, so you can see even more weird and wacky things that I do on this channel and review. So that's it, wrapping up. Thanks very much for checking out this video, and of course, as usual, until next time, happy clacking.